The Changemaker Leader podcast and membership is for leaders to discover their leadership DNA and build their brand from the inside and out, surrounded by supportive community. I'm Lee Mitchell, your host and the founder of the Changemaker Leader movement. I am your brand strategist helping you on your journey to impact more lives.
Hello, and welcome to the Changemaker Leader podcast. I'm Lee Mitchell, and today I'm so excited to welcome a dear friend and member of WIBN, Karoline Bourdeau of KRB Consulting. And today we're going to be exploring what happens when you finally trust your own voice. Welcome, Karoline. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do today, and then we're going to dive into your background and how you have become the change maker that you are today.
Thank you. So I guess I'll start by telling you a little bit about what I'm doing now, and then we can go back if that works.
Yeah.
Um, so right now I have a business with my husband, and what we do is we create courses specialized for not-for-profits or groups, really, and they range from everything to do with advocacy, communication, employer obligations, governance, um, photography, Photoshop. We create it, we deliver it, and if we can't deliver it, we'll find someone who will. Um, but most of the time, it ends up being a lot of uh, fun interaction between us and the people attending the course. And we usually have a lot of repeat invitations for the same course. And I often say, well, I want to try new ones, but people want the same ones. So it's always been a challenge, but it's been a fun journey.
That's amazing. So can you give me an idea of your the types of clients that you tend to train and a little bit about the outcomes of your training?
So a lot of the times we're working with groups, for example, of seniors, and
Mhm.
the outcomes that they want and are looking for is information to help them navigate certain situations. So recently, we completed a course about seniors and the law. It was an 8 week course once a week for an hour and a half, and we talked about all kinds of things related to law and seniors. So everything from what's in your lease, what happens when you go to a retirement home, how to navigate that system, dealing with the healthcare system, and advocating for yourself. One of the things that we know, and I can tell you from personal experience of speaking with seniors and having family members, is they don't want to rock the boat. So they grew up with the idea that the doctor's always right. But we know for a fact that it's not always the case. And while it is good to take advice from the professionals, you need to do a little bit of your own research and you need to figure out if something is bugging you and telling you that it's not right, then you need to speak up. Um, and you need to use the system that's there. So, using patient advocates, having family members there. We did a lot of discussions with them about those things. We talked about how to create a just in case binder, which is one of our most popular sessions. So, what happens if you become incapacitated? Somebody has to come in and pay your bills, figure out, where your bank is, what legal documents they need to deal with. I think we all need to create some kind of system to allow people to help you when that's needed. So that's one huge one. So I hope that what people get from our courses is empowerment to try new things, to feel better about what they're doing, to ask questions and to ask for more.
why don't you tell us a little bit about your unique situation and how you grew up and the challenges that you faced?
Sure. So I was born in a part of the world where people who are blind did not receive education. So I basically was homeschooled because my father truly believed that everyone needs an education.
Hmm.
So um, being put through a ton of medical stuff, exploratory surgeries, all kinds of things up until the age of um, 3 or 4. And that part is big to me, but that's okay.
Hmm.
I still was curious and wanted to learn things. So I think I was probably the only child who got read Shakespeare to before bedtime. Um, and Sorry, my computer just did something funny. Am I still there?
Yep, you're still here.
Okay. Um, I'm just gonna fix that. Sorry.
That's okay.
Um, so a child that goes to bed after listening to Shakespeare, I had some nightmares. And I did get a bit of fairy tales as well, but mostly it was very academic stuff that he read me because that's what he happened to be reading. I think he even read me some of his banking books that he was studying. Um, but that still didn't give me the experience of going to school like everyone else. So I got to stay home while my cousins, my neighbors, my sister all got to go to school. And I have to say, like, I don't know what that did to me socially, but it was very odd because I didn't have the same experiences as everyone else. Um, we moved to Canada when I was 12. We arrived in Montreal in December. We were living in Dubai at the time, so we went from 30 degrees Celsius at night to minus 30 in Montreal. Um,
Wow.
and The clothes that we had with us were not exactly adequate. So the next day, I vividly remember going to Eaton's in Montreal and buying like boots and clothes and coats, and getting to experience snow. And then immediately after that, I started attending at the Montreal Association for the Blind because I needed to pick up a lot of skills. I didn't go to school like everyone else, so I didn't have all of those important basic skills. Um, I could do some math. I knew a lot. I just didn't have it in the same structure as everyone else. Plus, my English was not good, so I had to learn English. I had to learn some French. And I did that for a year. Then I think this was the most difficult piece for me was then I got moved into a special education classroom, um, so I can learn to actually write. And I don't know why it was insisted on that I had to handwrite because that wasn't really helpful to me. I couldn't really see it, but and my handwriting is pretty horrible. If you've seen it, you'd know. Um, but that was a tough year for me because I did not get along with anyone in the class. They all had different challenges than me, um, but I just could not fit in. So I ended up socializing with kids in other classes because I seemed to get along better with them. Um, I looked for other things to do when I wasn't in class and joined choir and so on. Then I went to junior high in Montreal for 2 years, um, and that went really well. But then we moved to Ontario, and I skipped grade 9 because the education system in Quebec was at the time stronger than it is in Ontario. So I went from grade 8 to grade 10. Um, which was wonderful. I met like an amazing group of friends. I started to do way more in the community. I was getting out a lot more. Um, and I was learning who and what I wanted to be. And I remember going to a career day and meeting a man who was a lawyer. And I just was lit up. I was like, this is what I want to be. So I went home and I remember putting my bag down and saying to my parents, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I'm sure they went, yeah, right. Okay, great. But that was my goal. I now had a goal and I worked towards it. I did 2 more years of high school, graduated in grade 12, went to Queens. And that was a big challenge for me. I also got my first guide dog at the same time as starting at Queens. I don't recommend people do so many big things at the same time because I don't know how I survived it.
Mm.
Um, Having a guide dog is a huge responsibility. It's also learning a whole new lifestyle. It's being with this other creature that has its own needs and its own demands. And the creature I was paired with was a very strong willed, gorgeous red golden retriever who knew I had never had a dog. I don't know how, but she knew that. And she was like, huh, I'm in control. Um, and so we had a lot of arguments about, what things she could and couldn't do. But once we got it figured out, we were zipping around Kingston like you wouldn't believe. At that time, I also started working and, experiencing different things, attending model parliament. Thought I would run for politics at some point and decided that wasn't for me. And then I started to have real challenges with academics. Professors not really understanding what accessibility meant, um, and wanting me to just do things like everyone else. And this is the first instance, I think, of me learning to say, no, this is not working for me. They want you to pick up a paper textbook and work with it. And yes, I had technology at the time that could enlarge it because at the time I was using large print. But it was really exhausting. My eyes would get so tired and I would need to stop. Um, and then enter text to speech, which was like the most amazing thing I could find. And I'll explain that in a second. But it
Mhm.
allowed me to listen to everything rather than do it visually. But it also allowed me to type and listen to what I was typing. So now I can produce work that was, readable by everyone else, having computers. So I had to learn quickly how to use a computer, how to produce work, how to edit things. I'm still not great at editing things. Um, but, um, that was the hard thing. Professors who didn't want to extend deadlines. Yeah, I've had professors tell me that I was, using the system, taking advantage. Um, I really just wanted them to someday lose their display and try and do things the way that I did, because it was hard and time consuming, and I just felt like it wasn't being uh, listened to. I did find a lot of support at Queen's, and I'm really, really fortunate that the accessibility services people were fabulous. They were great at advocating, but people still sometimes don't want to be persuaded. Um, when I started law school, I got really ill. And I got ill because the building had mold and some other problems in the wall. They, in fact, had to renovate the basement, and they now have beautiful new lecture halls that I will never use, but I'm happy for everyone else who can use them. I wasn't the only one who got sick with the same thing. And that required a ton of work advocacy on my part and on the part of the Human Rights Office at Queen's and accessibility services and some of the other professors who were supportive because we basically needed to reconstruct my law school time so that I can actually graduate. I ended up leaving for a year and a half or almost 2 years because I was sleeping 18 hours a day. Um, I was so sick. So coming from that, you know, the fact that I can now do all the things I do, I'm still in awe. It wasn't easy. I had to do a lot of strengthening exercises. I had to do a lot of walking, work with my dogs, work with family and friends, and try and figure out who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and what my purpose is. And I still think like I haven't arrived there. Um, yeah, so that's where I am. I graduated finally and I did article and decided my body decided it wasn't for me. So here's another incidence of listening to yourself.
Mm.
Um, I started to get mysterious illnesses and there was nothing wrong with me according to all the medical testing that they would do. Um, and when I finally said I don't want to practice law, it was like a huge weight came off me and I started to feel better again. Um,
Hmm.
and I can't emphasize enough the power of sitting with yourself and saying, what do I want? Is this what I want? Is this okay for me? And I got that through working with different leadership coaches um, who gave me the space to figure those things out because I didn't know that I could even do that.
Wow. And okay, so I guess I want to sort of solve the mystery of the activity that you do uh, it, while being sight impaired. So just curious, how did you get into sailing?
So the sailing was interesting. We had met some friends through friends when we moved to Toronto, and they are sailors, and they were like, "You have to come out sailing." And my first thought was, "No, not me. I don't like water. I'm not a swimmer. I I'm not very coordinated. I'm kind of clumsy. You probably don't want me on a boat." Um, but I got persuaded to go and I went. And I remember my first sail, and anybody who was there will tell you this is exactly how it happened. I huddled in the corner of the boat and would not move for like the first hour. I was not moving because I was not comfortable. Eventually, I did take the helm for a bit, and that was okay. And then I was like, okay, I tried it, I'm done. But they weren't done with me because they kept saying, no, you have to come back, you have to come back. Um, anyway, through a lot of work with our amazing skippers and crew and friends, I started racing a couple of years ago, and I now really enjoy sailing and racing and the sailing life. And I'm president of the sailing club, the Blind Sailing Canada Club now. Or sorry,
Wow,
we call
that
ourselves chair now. Sorry.
ah, that's so cool. And I only did sailing a couple of times. I remember sailing at camp and
Yeah.
then sailing through the recreation management program that I took at uh, at Humber. And both times I was absolutely terrified of sailing because it's you feel like you're going to fall out of the boat. At least I that's how I felt. And the waves and everything. So I can't imagine doing that where you can't see at the same time. So yeah, what are some tips for the blind sailor?
So actually, sailing is something you should not see to do
Oh,
because it's all
okay.
based on feel. So you want to feel where the wind is because that tells you where to direct the boat or how much lines to pull in or out. Um, you can feel what the boat is doing. Um, and you kind of have a relationship with the boat. And I mean, several of our sailors talk to the boat while they're sailing. I'm not sure how effective that is. I've never talked to the boat, but you have to learn to do that by feel. Um, and there have been some races that I was in where we were holding on for dear life. I can send you a video that was taken by another boat a couple of years ago where the waves were really crazy, the wind was wild, and it was raining. So we were wet. The boat was heeled over. Um, I remember once, like falling into the middle of the boat and not being able to get up because the boat was like sideways and somebody had to pull me. Um, but those are the fun sails. Those are the ones you remember. I love the quiet, calm sails that you go on and you can sit and have lunch and it's quiet, but there's something really cool about where there's high waves and you're really working to control the boat and keep everybody safe.
Wow, that's yeah. I can't even imagine. I've yet to get back into a sailboat because I did find it. Yeah, just
Good
I'm
hat.
not. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not a nautical person. I love swimming and I love the water. In fact, it's a big part of my mental health strategy is spending time by water. But I admit I don't like being in like motorized boats. And there
Yeah,
was something about sailing too that at the time was really scary. Although I have changed a lot since the last time I tried. So I think after having children, I'm a much braver person than I was back then. So who knows? Maybe
maybe we'll
sailing
try
could be in
someday.
my future. Yes, because I
Yeah,
do kayak and I paddleboard and things like that. So yeah, you never
yeah,
know. Maybe there's a chance for me yet still.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I want to touch something
yeah,
before we keep going. Um,
sure.
Even though I've been saying, listening to yourself, there is a difference between not wanting to do something because of fear and not wanting to do something because it's not right for you. Had I listened
Mm,
to myself when I said, no, 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 I don't want to sail, it's not for me, I would have missed out. But that's a different thing. I think.
mm.
And I think you know that yourself when a decision is being made or a direction's being followed because of fear or compliance or because it's the right or wrong thing for you to do. And I think it's always good to be aware of those differences.
Okay, that's a great caveat to sort of describe, the differences in trusting your inner voice and knowing when to trust people, but also honor yourself. So I really love that. Thanks for clarifying that. So tell us about how you ended up. So have you always been a business owner?
Pretty much like I started my own mediation business when I left law because it was the closest thing and I loved it. Mediation is something that I truly love and believe in. It's a wonderful thing when people come to a conclusion because of a process that they have gone through, as opposed to having a judge order you to do something. Um, and a lot of times when you go through mediation, you sometimes heal relationships. You have a way of understanding the other perspective. Um, in my experience, anyway, where mediation has been successful is you didn't get everything you wanted, but you got something else, which is an understanding or a resolution that is totally under your own control. So yeah, I did that. And then from there, I think um, we started our own business together because mediation was not working out in Toronto for me. So I needed to redirect myself to something else.
Okay. So how did you get into doing what you do now?
Funny story. My husband met or saw an ad for a seniors organization that was looking for people to facilitate a course. He applied. He was an educator as well, and he started to do work for them. Um, their funding changed, so they asked him to do the training um, on his own for a service fee, of course, but it was a different funding process. And then after he did a bunch of this, we talked about it and decided, well, what if we did this together? Because at the same time, they asked me to do write a storytelling course, so I did that. Then I was asked to do something else, and we thought, you know what, it's just a good idea to put it into a business, and that's how it came to be. Um, Also on the side too, and like it's still part of the business, but I need to push this a little more. Is I love to do keynote talks. I love to talk to people about anything and everything. And so I started to do some of those as well. And that has been a really fun and exciting part of things. And you know what? I've been doing this unofficially since I was in high school. I remember my high school teacher, one of them, asking me to talk to a class about what it's like to use a cane around the high school, or what it's like to be blind and to be in the school, and what things people could do to make life easier. So I started I had my own roadshow in the high school and I would do this. And then when I went to Queens, I started to do a similar program through the accessibility services group, and we did that for a few years. Um, and I just never stopped doing those. So now, of course, they take on different shapes depending on who I'm speaking to and what it's about. But yeah, like that, I think that is the thing that gives me the most fun and motivation, is to give people something a little bit different than what they're used to.
Hmm. So, if someone was advocating for someone with a special, unique situation with their health or their well-being, what type of advice do you have so that that doesn't take away the actual person's autonomy? You know, because sometimes you don't want to be in a situation where, like you said, where people are telling you what to do, and I'm sure they have good intentions, but it doesn't always feel like you have autonomy to, you know, live the life that you want on your own terms if someone else is leading the charge on your life. So how do you navigate for someone when you need help? Because we all need help from people, but how can they do it in a way that feels right for the person being helped?
So I think the best start is to ask the person, how can I help you? What would be best? Can we talk about your options? What would be the best outcome for you? Um, and it could be as simple as, these are the people you need to talk to. I'm going to stop and tell you a story about how much of a troublemaker I was as a teenager, and I just remembered this. I was supposed to have eye surgery in Ottawa at the Eye Institute. The day before, I met the doctor that's supposed to perform this surgery. My gut said, run. I was 16. I don't know why. I just said, I'm not doing this. And my mother was furious, like, you got here, how many people would want to be in your shoes, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is, such an opportunity. But there was something about the situation, the doctor, whatever, did not sit well with me. They could have been perfectly fine. But at the time, my instinct was no. So I said, I'm not doing this. Um, Lucky for me, I had been in control of my own medical decisions for quite a few years by then. So I was able to say, I'm not doing this. And I walked away. What that taught me is that you have to listen to that, because had I allowed myself to be pressured, um, who knows what the outcome would have been. And it could have been nothing. But at the same time, um, I would have suppressed my own, um, I guess, will, which is not always a good thing. So when you want to advocate for somebody else, you need to ask them, what do you want? What would work best for you? How can I help? Don't assume anything about them,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you don't know where they've been and what their journey is. And maybe they don't want that medical intervention, or maybe they don't like that doctor and need another opinion. We're all allowed to ask for other opinions. A lot of people think, this is the doctor I have, I'm stuck. Actually, no, you're not stuck. There, there are others. It may be harder to get another doctor in Ontario right now, but still, you can ask questions. Don't be afraid to do your research. Um, I hope that's helpful.
No, it's extremely helpful. And I love the story about, you do have a choice to find another doctor. And I personally have been through that myself. I was with the same physician for a really long time. And, he was a great doctor, but I found that his reluctancy to help me get treated for menopause, uh, it was just, it felt like so much red tape to get on medication, HRT therapy. And I finally just had enough. And I got a recommendation from a friend. And now I'm going to a doctor down the street. So I'm no longer commuting to go to the doctor's office. And this doctor really listens to me. And it's just like the whole system is like 1,000 times better. So, sometimes it feels really scary. And I remember feeling a little bit scared because I had been with the same doctor for so long, but it was so worth the risk. So I
Yep.
think that's something to really focus on, is like there's some things that are worth taking a risk for. So I'm just curious, what are things that you're willing to take a risk on? Because we talked about before the podcast that sometimes it's, not that you can be spontaneous, but that your life requires a lot of planning. So, what types of risks do you like to take? Obviously, sailing.
Um, yeah, and some days it is a big risk. No, I love to do new things. I love to learn new things. I love to travel. You know, I love to explore new cities. When I was in Atlanta, oh gosh, quite a few years ago, we had an afternoon where there were no sessions in the conference I was at. So I took my dog and I went exploring the city of Atlanta, and I went walking, got caught in the rain, got soaked, made our way back. This was before we had GPS and wayfinding software. Um, but we figured out how to get ourselves back to the hotel, and it was like the most freeing, wonderful thing that there is. I think that you can be spontaneous with some parameters and some planning for safety. For example,
Mhm.
if I know I'm going to be out for the whole day, even though if I don't know what I'm doing, I have to remember to bring a meal for my dog. Um, and if it's going to be raining, well, we both might need rain gear. And other than that, really, there are not a lot of limits on what I can do. I've gone dancing. I've left my dog with other people when I do that because they should not be going to a dance club. When I go to concerts, I leave my dog at home. Um, but really, you can be as spontaneous as you want within knowing what your parameters are and what you are able to do within that. I mean, we're lucky we have Uber, we have Wheel-Trans, we have taxis, we have public transit. You can get yourself around. You just have to ask a lot of questions.
Okay, yeah, and I love how you advocate for yourself in terms of like, planning ahead. You've attended many in-person events. We were also a part of the Microsoft Women of Microsoft leadership event, and we did a photo shoot. Like, you do many different really amazing things, and I'm just curious, how has it been having your service dog? I know that you've shared several times on social media some challenges that you've had, especially with uh, like ride shares and
Yeah.
pre-ordering taxis, things like that. And then, of course, I know when you came to one of our experiential events down at Gardner Museum, you were dropped off at the wrong museum.
Oh my God, yes, I forgot about
It's just, yeah, exactly.
it.
So, how, it's not for your lack of knowledge and uh, abilities to plan for yourself. It's like the things that are out of your control. So how do you, I guess it's a two-part question. One is, how do you deal with things that are outside of your control and put you at risk? And then second, I'd love you to share a little bit about what it's like having a service dog, because I know you recently had to um, change service dogs, but I believe you kept your original service
He's
dog.
in here with
So
me. Yeah.
yeah, so tell me a bit about how you cope with you know these challenges that other people put you in, those situations outside of your control, and let's talk about the service dog, and then we'll wrap things up.
So, I think I am really lucky to be living where and when I am because we have cell phones. Everybody's a call away. I am pretty aware. I I look at maps while I'm in a taxi, so that I know where I am, like I'm tracking. Um,
That's
and
good.
for the most part, I sort of plan for the unexpected. So always carry water, um, always kind of figure out, okay, what's near where I am, um, what do I need to do? Um, I called you guys pretty quickly when I realized, oh, I'm in the wrong museum.
Yeah, you did.
It was very fast. It was like, oh, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, and as for like access refusals, you try and stay calm. You try to be as kind as possible. You try and explain what the dog is for. It's a lot more effort than most people have to put out when they leave their house. Friends who are also guide dog users, and I often talk about, the disability tax, like having to constantly be planning around, making a plan B and a plan C because if my ride doesn't show up, what do I do? Now I need to wait for another one. Um, if I'm going somewhere, I'm often like half hour, 45 minutes early because I build in time for
Okay.
things to go wrong. Um, so that's kind of frustrating. Um, but it works. I mean, you just do what you have to do. You don't even if I thought about it every single day, I would never go anywhere. So I just don't think of it. I just do it.
I like that. What a great answer. So, tell us a
The
bit
dog.
about, yeah, about the dog, because that's also an interesting situation that most people are not aware of. I mean, we know at this point, don't don't pet a service dog, but there's so many other parts of that whole journey that the average person would have no clue about. So tell us about that.
So, I recently retired my guide dog because she's turning 10 and she did the quiet quitting thing where she was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to get in the car today. Oh, is that an escalator? I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to do that." And you can see her stopping at odd places. So she was telling me she wanted to stop working. Lucky another match was found for me, so I had to apply to a couple of guide dog schools. Um, and they came and did like a whole involved assessment of where I live, what I do. That's really hard when you're not a 9 to 5 worker. My day is not always the same. So my dogs have to be very flexible, and dogs are routine oriented. So it's very challenging. I also live in the city and I'm often downtown. So I need a dog that's very stable, very adventurous, bold. Um, and so once they determine all of that, they measure your walking speed. Um, they then start looking for a dog for you. That process it took me 20 months for them to find me a dog. Um, I went and was matched with my boy Guardian. His actual name is Guardian of the Galaxy, but I am not using all of that. And so he and I had to train together for 2 weeks. It was a very intense 2 weeks. We walked for 6 hours a day, I would say, um, sometimes less, sometimes more. We spend all our time together and then we flew home and just started life. And the weekend I brought him home. I had things going on and I said, "Did you want me to cancel anything?" I asked the trainers, like, do I want to break him in slowly? They said, "Nope, just go live your life." So the first weekend this boy was home, he went to a blind hockey game, he went to 2 theater productions, and he met a whole bunch of friends. So, he's a very flexible, very good dog.
Wow. And how do your two dogs uh, get along?
They really like each other. When, our friends had my retired girl, Raven, for a week just to give me a break so I can work with him more. We went to visit them, and when the two dogs saw each other, they ran towards each other. It was really, really cute.
Oh
And
my
now
goodness.
when we separate them because, he and I go out for the day or do something, when we get home, she's there to greet him and he looks for her. And he's teaching her how to play, actually, which is really cool because she was not a very toy-oriented dog. We bought her all kinds of toys. She would just look at them and walk away. He loves toys, so he's now teaching her how to play with toys. It's really cool.
Oh, that's amazing. I never thought of that. I only have one dog, and like this dog plays with other dogs, but they don't live, I don't have
Yeah.
two dogs. So yeah, I would never, that's really interesting how they can teach each other things
Oh,
and
yes.
they can adapt together. That's really quite touching.
Yeah. They wait for each other when we go for walks. They look for each other. Yeah, it's very, very
Wow.
cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Wow. That's so lovely. Okay, well,
Yeah.
we're getting to the end of our time together, and this has been so interesting to me. I'd love it if you could just share a few final tips on, advocating for yourself and also just really feeling how you are able to um, what does happen when you find your and trust your voice. So what is the outcome of that?
So, sometimes when you are waiting to make a decision, when something has happened and you want to know what to do, for me, I'm a very analytical person, so I want to think through everything. That's not to say I don't make quick decisions. I do. Um, I often sit with a pros and cons list. Sometimes I'll journal about it for days and days. Sometimes I just put it out of my head and do absolutely nothing about it, and the answer will come in the most unexpected times and places, like when you're in the shower, when you can't write it down, or when you're cooking, or you're out for a walk. But what happens when you start really stopping and taking time on your own? My friend calls it the park bench. When you sit on the park bench and you really think about, who am I? What do I want? What is it that would make me feel better? When you follow decisions that come from that place, it's a totally different feeling. You don't feel the panic. There's no rush. You can plan out whatever it is that you need to, and you feel like it's coming from a good place, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to when you're being pressured to do something. And
Mm.
that never comes from a good place. You find your voice more. I've been able to do things like stand up for myself when I'm being asked to do something and I'm not comfortable doing it, or it's not right for me, because of taking the time to do those things. I've been able to say no more often. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have been able to say yes to the things that I want. Um, And frankly, people don't always take it well. That's okay. That's not your problem. That's a them problem. Um,
Mm.
and I think you end up sleeping better.
Yeah, because you're living your life on your own terms.
Mm.
That's that's magical, really.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like when did you have any backlash from your parents when you decided that continuing with the law school? So I guess you graduated from law school and
Yeah.
you started articling and you had that moment where you're like, this isn't working. I'm just curious, like, what did people around you, how did they react to that? 'Cause that
So it
must have
was
been
really,
difficult
really,
because you're young. You're a very young person, and it's we're I feel like we grow into ourselves.
yeah.
So I'm just curious, how did that all work out? I mean, obviously it's worked out, but at the time, what
Yeah.
did you learn?
So I have to tell you, I have never been so scared in my life. Um, when I decided that it wasn't for me, I happened
Hmm.
to be part of another women in business group. And this woman sat at one of the dinners at the table I was at, and I just introduced myself and I asked her what she did, like what was her business, because that's what you ask at those things. And she said she was an executive coach. And I was like, okay, that's great. So then I went home and I just could not let that go.
Hmm.
So I called her and I said, I think I need to talk to you. I think we need to work together if you want to help me sort through this, because I don't feel like law is for me. Um, and I don't know how to break this to my immediate family, to my husband, with whom I was working at the time. And
Mm.
I was really, really scared, like, what's gonna happen when I say this out loud? Um, and I worked with her for a few months while I was still articling and working. And then I had to sit down and like say it like, okay, I don't want to practice law. And that was like the hardest thing for me to say. And the funniest reaction was that he said, "Well, I knew that."
Your husband said that.
Yeah,
Wow. So he was just waiting for you to
to come to
understand that.
yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So what's it? I guess if you don't mind, I know we're supposed to wrap things up, but I'm just like my curiosities and going into overload. What's it like um, being in a situation with your partner where you work together and obviously you've been together for a long time? Like, how do you? And I know your husband it has sight.
Yeah.
So what's that like? Because sometimes people end up in a situation where they both have the same, disability or whatever, but other times they don't. It's a
That's
unique situation because he can't understand what it's like to be in your shoes.
yeah, and that's actually a really good question. And it's one that I think everyone I know who's in the same situation as me, in a relationship with a person who's not blind, we all have this same thing in common. They can't understand how we're feeling because they're not walking in our shoes.
Mhm.
Um, and it leads to a lot of tension.
Mm.
I'm a very methodical person. I put things exactly in the same spot so I can find them the next time. Um, he doesn't quite do that. I notice when things are not clean based on touch.
Hmm.
Um, So I know when the counter is not clean because I can touch and there's crumbs on it, right? So I go and
Mhm.
I clean it. Um, he says, "Oh, it looks fine," but it doesn't look fine to me. So that's an example of that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
he also thinks I overplan, but I have to overplan. I don't have a choice. Like I want to do things and I want to be safe, so I need to overplan. I think it's more of a personality thing than it
Hmm.
is basically being sighted or not, because I know
Mhm.
other couples who are both blind or both sighted and they have exactly the same thing. The difference for me is you tend to feel more vulnerable um, as a person with a disability.
Mhm.
Um, and so you're more vigilant, which isn't necessarily the best thing, but you are.
I can relate to that, just because like I've been married for a really long time, 26 years. If you don't mind me asking, how long have you been married?
It's going to be 25 next year.
Oh, oh, congratulations. Yeah. So being married for as long as you have, that your relationship goes through many journeys,
Yes.
and and when you're different people or you have different life circumstances, it can be very difficult to see where the other person is coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of patience and good communication to see yourself through these challenges. I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. I remember telling you when we navigated going to the conference, we went to a conference together that was like towards the beginning of our relationship,
Yeah.
and I remember being kind of scared about like navigating that with you. And you were just like, you knew what you needed. And, I was able to ask questions and make sure that I didn't, make you feel like I was taking away your autonomy. And, I feel like that relationships are like that too. You have to learn how to not take away each other's autonomy and, that you're two separate people that come together, that choose to come together every single day. So Thank you for sharing a little bit about that. That's really beautiful. And congratulations on celebrating almost 25 years.
Thanks, you too. I want to finish with this. It's really important to take time to do things on your own for you or with separate people because
Hmm.
it keeps things interesting. It keeps you engaged in something else. Um, and I think it helps you stay strong.
Yeah, it's true. And I love that you work together. I know like Rob and I, like you met Rob at one of our leadership retreats, and he
Yeah.
he really I remember him saying to me afterwards he loved walking with you and
Yeah, we went
being
on
your
the forest
guide.
walk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was your guide on the forest walk when we did the forest therapy, and that was really special to him. So I love that you've met him, and hopefully maybe one day your husband will attend future events. That would be really amazing. So how can people find you? And if there's any parting words that you want to share, anything, yeah, just share away.
Okay. So, people can find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to talk to you about any specialized courses you want or training. And if you need a speaker for a conference, I would love to talk to you about that. And my last parting thought for anyone, and but especially women, if something in your life doesn't feel right, it likely isn't. So listen to that.
Mm, yes, I think that we can, as women, we can all relate to that. So that is a great way to end today's podcast. So thank you so much, Caroline. It has been an absolute joy having you share a little bit about how one can own their imprint, and you are a true change maker. Keep advocating, keep doing what you do. The world needs you.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Changemaker Leader podcast and would like to share with you a few words on the Women in Biz Network community, a home for change making women in business. Meet Women in Biz Network, Canada's most welcoming community for women who love business and want to make positive change in the world together. We believe every woman deserves a place where she is welcomed before she is judged, encouraged before she is evaluated, and connected before she is expected to succeed alone. Whether you are building a business, growing a career, mentoring others, or simply looking for your people, Women in Biz is where relationships form, ideas are shared, and opportunities are made possible through connection rather than competition. Our job board is where opportunity meets belonging, with every employer vetted for benefits and culture that help women build a future they actually want.